into something entirely different. The hands on the courtroom clock showed exactly 2:34 this afternoon when something that has no historical parallel unfolded inside courtroom 4 at the Federal District Courthouse situated in Washington, D.C. And what transpired during those following minutes will reverberate throughout American history for generations yet to come. Positioned before the crowded courtroom was the jury, specifically juror number 7, a 47-year-old secondary school educator who travels daily from Alexandria, Virginia. And this person clutched the official verdict sheet tightly with both hands, lifted their gaze to directly meet the judge's eyes, and then spoke out loud the words that no former president has ever been compelled to hear inside any American courtroom across the entire 248-year existence of this nation. The words emerged clearly, deliberately, with no hesitation whatsoever. On count 1, conspiracy to defraud the United States, we the jury find the defendant Donald J. Trump guilty. On count 2, obstruction of an official proceeding, we the jury find the defendant Donald J. Trump guilty. On count 3, conspiracy against rights, we the jury find the defendant Donald J. Trump guilty. The vote on each and every count was 12-0. Completely unanimous. There existed not a single juror among the 12 who held even the slightest trace of uncertainty. The atmosphere inside that courtroom instantly erupted into complete disorder. Journalists scrambled frantically toward the doorways, desperate to transmit their breaking news. Onlookers gasped audibly while others wept openly. The defense legal team remained frozen in their chairs, completely motionless. And seated there was Donald Trump himself at the defense table, wearing a dark suit with an American flag pin carefully fixed on his lapel, his gaze locked straight forward into the empty space ahead. Not a single trace of emotion crossed his facial expression. At exactly 2:41 p.m., a full 7 minutes after the verdict had been officially read into the court record, Judge Tanya Chutkan conveyed her appreciation to the jury for their dedicated service, formally released them from their responsibilities, and delivered the announcement that sentencing would occur on Friday, February 28th at 10 a.m. precisely. You need to subscribe to this channel immediately. And I mean right this very moment, because what I am about to guide you through in detail is not simply a legal decision. This represents the defining instant when the American judicial system rendered its judgment upon a former president of the United States. This is the instant when 12 ordinary American citizens, after devoting 6 complete days to deliberation behind closed doors, reached a unanimous decision that the evidence presented established guilt beyond any reasonable doubt whatsoever that Trump actively conspired to overturn and subvert a legitimate election. And this is the instant when a federal judge scheduled the sentencing date for Friday, which is now merely 3 days away from this present moment, when the actual consequences and real-world implications of that guilty verdict will ultimately be determined and proclaimed. Activate your notifications right this second. Configure them specifically to all because between this moment and Friday morning at 10 a.m., the single question dominating every legal expert's mind across America is this: exactly how many years will Trump spend incarcerated in federal prison? But here is what nobody reveals about what actually transpired during those 6 days of jury deliberations. Because the detailed chronology of the jury's process reveals exactly how these 12 individuals reached their historic unanimous verdict. The jury first entered the deliberation chamber and commenced their work on Thursday, February 20th at exactly 9 a.m. That entire initial day was occupied with thoroughly examining the lengthy jury instructions provided by the court and systematically arranging the vast amount of evidence into manageable sections. The jury made specific requests for particular documents on day 1, including the complete transcript of the January 5th telephone conversation between Trump and Pence. And they also requested the audio recording of Trump explicitly telling his accountant that he had misrepresented property values. On day 2, which occurred on Friday, the jury deliberated continuously for 8 straight hours. They formally requested a complete playback of Pence's testimony, specifically the section regarding the exchange in which Trump told him it was his final opportunity to take the correct action. On Saturday, day 3 of deliberations, the jury took a scheduled break from active deliberations, but they nevertheless asked to review specific trial exhibits during the weekend period. On Monday, which represented day 4, deliberations resumed at full intensity. The jury submitted a request to the judge asking for an exact legal definition of willful blindness, which experienced legal observers immediately recognized as a strong indication that they were actively examining whether Trump had deliberately and intentionally avoided knowing certain incriminating facts. On Tuesday, day 5, the jury deliberated for an exhausting 9-hour period. They sent a formal communication to the judge requesting clarification regarding the obstruction charge, asking specifically whether Trump needed to personally be physically present inside the Capitol building for the obstruction charge to have legally occurred. The judge replied in writing that physical presence was absolutely not required under existing law. On Wednesday, which constituted day 6 of deliberations, the process commenced again at 9 a.m. sharp. At exactly 1:47 p.m., the jury composed and dispatched a communication to the judge. The communication contained just 4 words: "We have reached a verdict." At precisely 2:34 p.m., the verdict was officially read aloud in open court. Hit that like button immediately if you completely grasp the significance of what just occurred here. 12 jurors, after 6 complete days of thorough deliberations, unanimously found a former president of the United States guilty of serious federal crimes. The algorithm determines what content breaks through and reaches widespread audiences. You are the one who decides whether this comprehensive analysis reaches the individuals who urgently need to view it. Because what I am presenting to you here is the American justice system performing exactly what it was originally created to do, which is applying the law equally and fairly to every person regardless of their wealth, their influence, or their political standing in society. At 2:47 p.m., Trump was accompanied out of the courtroom by his group of attorneys. He paused momentarily at the courtroom entrance, turned his body to face the courtroom audience, and uttered the following words. Quote, "This verdict is a disgrace. This is what a rigged system looks like. I will appeal. I will never stop fighting. The American people know the truth." He then departed the building through a side exit away from the main entrance. At 3:15 p.m., Trump conducted a press conference via video connection from his attorney's office location. He spoke continuously for 22 minutes without interruption. He directed attacks against the judge, the jury, the prosecutors, and the entire judicial system. He asserted repeatedly that the trial was rigged from the start. He asserted that the jurors were prejudiced against him. He asserted that the evidence presented was manufactured. He announced that he would be submitting an immediate appeal, and he vowed passionately to continue pursuing the presidency. He accepted absolutely no inquiries from the assembled media. Post a comment immediately. Tell me directly what you believe the judge should sentence Trump to. On Friday, I am personally examining every single response because this question has now become the most critical legal question confronting the entire nation. At 3:47 p.m., the special counsel Jack Smith conducted his own press conference. He spoke briefly and directly. Quote, "Today, a jury of 12 Americans, after thoroughly examining the evidence and deliberating for 6 days, unanimously found Donald Trump guilty on all 3 counts. This verdict reaffirms a principle that is fundamental to our democracy. No one is above the law. Not presidents, not former presidents, not anyone. We respect the jury's verdict." We will now prepare for the sentencing hearing on Friday. Smith accepted several inquiries from journalists who were present. He declined to specify what particular sentence prosecutors would advocate for, stating that recommendation would be formally presented at Friday's hearing. At 4:23 p.m., the White House released an official statement. Quote, "The president respects the independence of the judicial process and the jury system." He has no further comment on the verdict. At 5 p.m., reactions began streaming in from across the entire political spectrum. Share this video immediately because what I am about to explain in detail is what the guilty verdict actually signifies and what sentence Trump now confronts. On count 1, conspiracy to defraud the United States, the maximum possible sentence is 5 years. On count 2, obstruction of an official proceeding, the maximum possible sentence is 20 years. On count 3, conspiracy against rights, the maximum possible sentence is 10 years. If the judge sentences Trump to maximum consecutive sentences on every count, he could confront up to 35 years in federal prison. But judges rarely impose maximum consecutive sentences on first-time offenders without prior criminal records. More probably, the judge will carefully evaluate the federal sentencing guidelines, which take into consideration the seriousness of the offense, the defendant's criminal background, and both mitigating and aggravating circumstances. Legal authorities are projecting a sentence somewhere within the range between 8 and 15 years. The judge could also impose probation or supervised release with no incarceration whatsoever. Though most analysts consider that scenario improbable given the seriousness and unprecedented nature of the crimes. The judge could also impose concurrent sentences, meaning the sentences run simultaneously rather than consecutively. If the sentences are concurrent, Trump would serve the longest sentence, which is the 20-year maximum for the obstruction count. At 5:34 p.m., sentencing specialists began analyzing what Friday's hearing will actually involve. The prosecution will present arguments for a substantial prison term. They will cite the seriousness of the crimes, the danger to democracy, and Trump's absence of remorse. The defense will present arguments for a reduced sentence or no incarceration. They will cite Trump's age, his health, his absence of prior criminal record, and the unprecedented nature of prosecuting a former president. At 6:15 p.m., Republican members of Congress began responding publicly. Senator Mitch McConnell issued a statement. Quote, "I respect the verdict of the jury. The trial was conducted fairly. The jury deliberated for 6 days and reached a unanimous decision. That process should be respected." Senator Lindsey Graham issued a statement, quote, "I strongly disagree with this verdict. I believe this trial was politically motivated. I believe Trump was denied a fair process, and I believe the American people will hold accountable those who weaponize the justice system." Former President George W. Bush issued a statement through a spokesperson, quote, "The jury has spoken. The legal system has worked. All Americans should accept the verdict and move forward." At 7 p.m., demonstrations began outside the courthouse and at several Trump properties. Law enforcement were deployed to preserve order. By midnight, more than 40 demonstrations had been documented across the nation, some in support of the verdict and some opposing it. Here is what occurs at sentencing on Friday. The hearing will commence at 10 a.m. precisely. It will begin with presentations from the prosecution team. Prosecutors will deliver a detailed sentencing document arguing for a specific prison term. They will discuss the character of the crimes, the evidence presented at trial, and the necessity for deterrence. Then the defense will deliver their sentencing document arguing for the minimal possible sentence. They may present character witnesses, medical evidence regarding Trump's health, and arguments about the effect of imprisonment on a 78-year-old former president. Then Trump himself will have the chance to make a statement known as the right of allocution. This is the defendant's opportunity to speak directly to the judge before sentencing. Trump can apologize, express regret, or explain his conduct. Based on his public statements, however, it appears probable that Trump will use this opportunity to maintain his innocence and attack the process. After all presentations are completed, Judge Chutkan will deliver the sentence. She will announce the duration of any prison term, the conditions of any supervised release, and any financial penalties or special requirements. The sentence takes effect immediately. If Trump is sentenced to prison, he will be taken into custody at the courthouse following the hearing. Here is what we are monitoring between now and Friday. 6 indicators that will reveal what sentence Trump will receive. Indicator 1, what does the prosecution's sentencing document recommend? If they request 12 years, the judge is unlikely to go substantially higher. If they request 20, it indicates they want maximum accountability. Indicator 2, what does the defense present at sentencing? If they present medical evidence demonstrating Trump is in poor health, it could influence the judge toward a reduced sentence. Indicator 3, does Trump express any regret? If he apologizes to the nation and acknowledges the damage his actions caused, it could result in a reduced sentence. Based on his public statements, this appears improbable. Indicator 4, does Judge Chutkan indicate anything in her pre-sentencing orders? If she orders a pre-sentence investigation report with specific instructions, it may suggest her perspective. Indicator 5, do any character witnesses testify for Trump? If respected figures speak on his behalf, it could impact the judge's assessment. Indicator 6, does Trump attempt to postpone sentencing? If his attorneys file emergency motions to delay Friday's hearing, it will inform us they believe the sentence will be harsh. Here are 3 scenarios for Friday's sentence. Scenario 1, Trump receives a substantial prison term. The judge sentences Trump to between 8 and 12 years. Given the seriousness of the crimes and the necessity for deterrence, the judge determines that a substantial prison sentence is appropriate. Trump is taken into custody immediately. He is transferred to a federal facility. His appeal process commences while he is imprisoned. This is the incarceration scenario. Scenario 2, Trump receives a reduced sentence. The judge sentences Trump to 2 to 4 years, suspended with probation and community service. Given his age, his absence of prior record, and the unprecedented nature of the case, the judge determines that imprisonment is not required. Trump is not incarcerated. he is subject to supervision. His appeal continues while he is unrestricted. This is the probation scenario. Scenario 3. The judge postpones sentencing pending appeal. In extraordinary cases, judges sometimes postpone delivering sentence to permit the appellate process to proceed. If Judge Chutkan believes the appellate questions are substantial, she may sentence Trump to time already served and release him pending appeal. This is the postponement scenario, though it is the least probable given her handling of the case thus far. Subscribe immediately. Like this video. Comment with your forecast. What sentence does Trump receive on Friday? I am monitoring every development. And when Judge Chutkan announces the sentence on Friday at 10 a.m., you will view the analysis here instantly. Allow me to demonstrate why this verdict is historic. In 248 years of American history, no president or former president had ever been convicted of a federal crime until today. This verdict establishes that the position of the presidency does not protect anyone from criminal responsibility. It establishes that a jury of ordinary citizens can assess evidence and reach a verdict without being influenced by the defendant's fame, wealth, or political authority. It establishes that the rule of law applies equally to everyone. And it establishes a precedent that will determine how future presidents comprehend the boundaries of their authority and the repercussions of exceeding those boundaries. What I know with certainty right now, at 2:34 p.m. today, a jury of 12 Americans voted 12-0 to find Donald Trump guilty on all 3 federal counts. The jury deliberated for 6 days. They requested specific exhibits, clarifications of the law, and playbacks of crucial testimony. They inquired about willful blindness. They inquired about physical presence requirements. And then they voted unanimously on each count. Judge Tanya Chutkan thanked the jury, released them, and scheduled sentencing for Friday, February 28th at 10 a.m. Trump departed the courthouse and conducted a press conference claiming the verdict was rigged. Special Counsel Jack Smith conducted a press conference confirming the verdict and the sentencing date. The White House issued a statement respecting the verdict. Republican leaders responded across the spectrum from accepting the verdict to attacking it. Demonstrations erupted across the nation, and between now and Friday at 10 a.m. the question is what sentence a former president of the United States will receive for conspiring to subvert an election. This verdict is the result of 6 days of deliberations, 47 witnesses, weeks of testimony, thousands of pages of documents, and recordings of Trump in his own words. The jury considered everything. They posed the questions that needed to be posed, and they reached a unanimous conclusion. The verdict is delivered. The jury has communicated. 12 Americans randomly chosen with no obligation to convict. And every reason to be cautious about convicting a former president concluded unanimously that the evidence established guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And on Friday, the judge will determine what that guilt means in terms of years. Remain with this channel. Activate notifications. When Judge Chutkan announces the sentence on Friday morning, you will view the analysis here live. This represents the verdict. This represents history, and the sentencing is 3 days away.